Alright folks, this is Harris Sultan, and as you guys know, I have always said that what's happening in Britain will eventually happen in Australia. Australia held its ground for so long, said no to the globalist elite, and did everything it could up until now to save its borders from the invasion of people who come from hostile cultures. Yes, well done Australia, but that resolve might be coming to an end as Australians elected Labour in the last general elections who share the same values as the Labour Party in Britain. That is, stop listening to your own people and destroy your country from within. Australia's ruling party, the Labour Party, has just announced that it plans to give 3,000 humanitarian visas to Gazans stuck in a war zone. Let me give you a disclaimer. I have nothing against the people of Gaza, and I understand they're going through a very difficult time and need all the support they can get. But why are they not getting any support from the surrounding Muslim countries? Why do Australia and the West in general have to take in people who don't agree with Western values, who even blame the West for their misery? Are our leaders so gullible or downright corrupt that they think that once you let them in, they will fully integrate and not care about their Palestinian cause or Islamism? They look at politics and religion differently. If a child dies in Gaza, their mothers say we have 4 more children to sacrifice. They believe in martyrdom for their cause and gladly present children to achieve their political objectives. Their mothers say that they give birth to more babies so they can sacrifice them for their cause.
لماذا ينجبون أعدادا كبيرة من البنات والبنين؟ كان الرد جميل. الرد جميل. نحن ننجب هؤلاء بكثرة لندفعهم حتى للموت. This is more than just the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's a religious war that has been waging for over 1,000 years, and today's gullible politicians think that they can end it by releasing these men onto our streets. You might say that was Hamas, as though the Albanese government can differentiate between Hamas and ordinary citizens. Anyway, there is no question about this ordinary Gazan father who provokes an Israeli soldier to go ahead and shoot his son. Check out the video. I'm not here to judge their culture, each to their own, but I'm allowed to say that this culture shares nothing in common with ours. Surely, you could be forgiven back in the 70s when you didn't know that this ideology is not compatible with the West, but you have seen what's been happening in France, Germany, Canada, Sweden, and most recently in Britain. Today we see Muslim gangs roaming the streets of Britain with machetes beating up ordinary Brits while the police stand by the gangs. They burn Union Jack flags, but the moment an ordinary Brit says enough, he ends up in prison for up to 3 years. Listen to what Australia's opposition leader Peter Dutton had to say on this matter.
You don't know that Hamas sympathisers have been let into Australia or have had their visas approved.
No, I think the really alarming part here is that the government doesn't know that. Okay, so the government's supposed to be in control, and the government should give us assurance, and the Prime Minister's first responsibility should be to make decisions, even if they're tough decisions, to keep our country safe. The Prime Minister can't answer you the question as to whether or not he's brought in sympathisers because the proper checks weren't conducted. They didn't even do face-to-face interviews. We don't know the detail of whether people are sympathisers or not because they weren't asked.
So let me ask you again, why do you think Muslim countries don't take Palestinian refugees? Let's hear from a UAE politician.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
He, as a practicing Muslim and a leader of a Muslim country, can see it. I, as an ex-Muslim, can see it. But these self-righteous, know-it-all leftist politicians think they know better? Let's go through a bit of history before we go further. As you know, this conflict has been raging since 1948. Initially, a lot of Muslim countries supported what we now call the Palestinians. Surrounding Arab countries like Egypt, Jordan, and Syria were all against the state of Israel and wanted to wipe it off the map and create Palestine, where Muslims would rule the region. The Israelis, however, are also fighting for the right to exist, continually thwarting attacks from the Arabs. Jordan has hosted a significant number of Palestinian refugees since the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, also known as the Nakba. After the establishment of Israel, around 100,000 to 150,000 Palestinian refugees fled to Jordan. Following the 1967 Six-Day War, another wave of about 300,000 Palestinians, many from the West Bank, moved to Jordan. So by 1970, Jordan had nearly 500,000 Palestinian refugees. And then came Black September. The tensions between the Jordanian government and the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, which had established a strong presence in Jordan, led to a violent conflict now known as Black September. Basically, the PLO wanted to overthrow King Hussein's government. In September 1970, King Hussein of Jordan ordered military action against the PLO to assert his control, resulting in thousands of deaths. The fighting culminated in the expulsion of the PLO from Jordan by 1971. The refugees themselves were not expelled en masse. However, the PLO leadership and fighters were forced to relocate to Lebanon. The event marked a turning point in the relationship between the Jordanian government and the Palestinian refugee population. Today, the Jordanians are not fans of Palestinians. After the Palestine Liberation Organization was expelled from Jordan in 1971, it relocated its base operations to Lebanon. The presence of the PLO in Lebanon significantly contributed to the tensions and conflicts that eventually led to the Lebanese Civil War, 1975 to 1990. And today, Lebanon is a shadow of its former self. What was once the only egalitarian society in the Middle East is now reduced to a Hezbollah-infested hellhole. But that's not it. Let me give you another example. Kuwait initially hosted a significant number of Palestinian refugees after the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Palestinians in Kuwait found opportunities in education, healthcare, and the oil industry, and many became a vital part of Kuwait's workforce. So basically, on paper, they had integrated. But wait. By 1990, approximately 400,000 Palestinians lived in Kuwait, making up a substantial part of the population. The key turning point came during the first Gulf War when Iraq, under Saddam Hussein, invaded Kuwait in August 1990. You know what the PLO did? The PLO, led by Yasser Arafat, publicly supported Saddam Hussein, believing that his regime would champion the Palestinian cause. This stance, obviously, deeply angered the Kuwaiti leadership and population, who felt betrayed by the Palestinians. After the liberation of Kuwait in 1991 by the Americans, Kuwaitis retaliated against the Palestinians for what they perceived as betrayal. As a result, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were expelled from Kuwait. So wherever a Palestinian would go, of course, he would feel loyalty to his Palestinian cause. So country after country, they have shown one thing. They are loyal to their cause only, and they would even betray their fellow Muslim countries. So what hope in hell do you have when you think that you can give humanitarian visas to Gazans and they will stay loyal to Australia and not the Palestinian cause, which is in direct conflict with Australian values?
What is the solution to liberate people in the concentration camp called Palestine?
Jihad!
What is the solution?
Jihad!
Jihad!
We have all seen since October 7th how Muslim countries from all walks of life came together and protested day in, day out, all across the Western countries that hosted them. But it doesn't matter to them. This has caused significant radicalization of the Western populace. British people who were so trusting of their government that they never rebelled are now angered after seeing hundreds of protests every weekend from Muslims in favor of Hamas. And now, as a result, they are rioting in the streets of Britain. So is this what Albanese is bringing into Australia? The only major Western country that hasn't had a migrant or terrorist problem. This is what the woke virus does to everyone. They suffer from self-righteous virtue signaling disease, where any sane conversation around hostile people from hostile cultures is shut down by accusations of racism and bigotry, as they are calling Peter Dutton. There is a reason why, throughout centuries, different cultures existed separately because they possess different sets of values. Islamists think that it's okay to cover up a woman in black bin bags, take enemy women as sex slaves, and throw homosexuals off rooftops. They believe these to be virtuous acts, and you, Wokistanis, think that you can change them? No. You're going to get us all screwed. Any person who is slightly educated on Islam or Islamism or how the integration of the Muslim population has failed in the West can see that this is a disastrous move by the Albanese government.
Reason why you have to fight them is because they are Jews and Christians.
Of Birmingham will not tolerate the disrespect of our Prophet, peace be upon him, and there will be outcomes from your actions. You will have repercussions for your actions. We have been trained from birth that we must defend the honor of our Prophet, and we will lay our life on the line.
I'm glad that the opposition leader Peter Dutton has come out strongly against this move, but he's helpless because the next elections are not going to be held until September 2025. That's over a year away, and in the meantime, Albanese doesn't care. Let me give you an idea of their dishonesty and betrayal of Australian law. When you apply for a humanitarian visa from outside Australia, Australia's Department of Home Affairs will do all sorts of checks on you and is under no obligation to grant you that humanitarian visa, regardless of the fact that you are in a war zone. However, if you are inside Australia, then we have no way to deport people back to a war zone because you just can't do that. So now you want to see how the Albanese government circumvented that problem? They have already given 1,300 visitor visas to Gazans, and they are in Australia. These are tourist visas. Around 500 of them have already applied for protection visas. They did it to circumvent security checks. They have already come to Australia, and now, even if we find out that they are Hamas operatives or Hamas sympathizers, we have no way to deport them back to a war zone. They knew this, and that's why they did it. If this is not a slap in the face of the Australian public and a blatant disregard for Australia's legal procedures, then I don't know what is. Let me quote Peter Dutton. There's a real possibility that the Albanese government has allowed Hamas sympathizers and anti-Semites into our country by failing to conduct necessary checks. And he did that on purpose because, as I said, security checks are almost non-existent for visitor visas. This is a scandal. Why are you giving visitor visas to refugees? And just like in Britain, they're accusing every concerned person of racism and bigotry. Let me quote Peter Dutton again. Instead of debating the facts, Labour, the Teals and the Greens accuse the coalition of being racist and heartless. Same trick, same agenda, different country. I have seen what were once peaceful, clean neighbourhoods in London and how they now put some third world slums to shame. I have seen how Muslim gangs motivated by their ideology and their political commitment to the Palestinian cause roam through the streets of Britain, terrorising ordinary Brits. This is what awaits Australia as well. Do not let the Albanese government bring in thousands of refugees from a hostile culture. As I said at the start of the video, even Muslim governments are not willing to take them. Not that there is anything against them, but we just don't agree with their movement of terror and the destruction of Israel. It's not in line with our values, so stop intimidating us. Please like and share the video with people who think that we should let thousands of people from a war zone come to Australia unvetted. I am an ex-Muslim. I understand this ideology inside out, and I'm telling you, this is a recipe for disaster. Do not let Australia burn in the same fire we are seeing Britain burning in. Sectarian violence will shoot up just like in Britain. The streets of Melbourne and Sydney will have riots between different communities just as it is happening in Britain. Slogans like this, "Gas the Jews," will become normalized. Do you think that once these people come to Australia, they will forget about their Palestinian cause? Then you are a bigger idiot than the leaders who are causing this catastrophe. People are being jailed in Britain for up to 3 years for social media posts in which they are expressing their anger and disappointment against this mass migration. This will happen in Australia too if you allow this to happen. This is what always happens. They keep encroaching on your national values bit by bit. When you get angry, they stop. A few months later, they start from where they left off and encroach on your values all over again. And before you know it, your country is in ruins. Look at Great Britain. which I'm sorry to say is no longer great. Act now or you will also be going to jail for social media posts in a few years. This can no longer be called irrational fear-mongering. This has already happened in Britain and various parts of Europe, and it will happen in Australia. If you want to support this channel, then you can be my patron by going to patreon.com/Sultan, or you can buy me a coffee on buymeacoffee.com/Sultan. If you can't do it, just like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, ta-da. If you'd like to support my work, you can become my patron by going to patreon.com/Sultan, or you can simply buy me a coffee.